This is Jeremy Zwinger with the Rice Trader, and just summarizing the August 6th Rice Trader Report. It's just a pleasure, as always, to be here and talk about the interesting happenings in the market. With that, of course, I have to start out by inviting you to the World Conference. Registrations are about twice ahead of prior years, so it's looking like a great event. And of course, that's October 10 to 12 in Vietnam. We urge you to get your hotel room early because there's always those who try to do it at the end and there's issues. And please register because it is going to be a large event and we want to do our best to facilitate all of our customers' needs. So with that, it's another interesting week in the rice trade. As we've been saying, the lack or slowness of demand is greatly affecting the market. You can see this in all the major exporters, even though the Asian exporters are having a very good year. As you go down, you're seeing it in concerns in Thailand, you can see it in concerns in India, Vietnam, and Pakistan. Most players are saying that the demand is slower. The Chinese demand is definitely not as heavy. And ironically, you're seeing the Chinese exports compete against these same locations in Africa and other locations. Even in the US and in Turkey and Puerto Rico, you're seeing Chinese business and cargoes arrive. Mexico, you've also seen Chinese cargoes arrive. You're just seeing a lot of this Chinese exports of old crop hit the market, and it's really destabilizing things. As you've said over the last several weeks, you're at the point where you're at the highest stocks since 2000-2001 for rice, and the same with corn. So this is more complicated by the dynamics, of China taking some markets and taking some customers, and just a general feel that there's too much supply. When I talk to the trade, that's the feel. There's too much supply. We're hoping something changes. And of course, the flooding in Southeast Asia and the rains in Southeast Asia is concerning that it may pull back some of the supplies. The dryness in South America is concerning a little bit, just because there could be some effects. And of course, the monsoon's a little slow in India as well. But unfortunately, you look to build global stocks this year in rice alone, and this is a time where everything is kind of competing. You have cheap rice, you have cheap wheat, you have cheap corn, cheap soybeans, and there doesn't see a perceived window out. And of course, as a U.S. perspective, we're also having massive political interference. These tariffs, and there was again another talk of China putting another $66 billion of additional tariff, I believe, this morning on the U.S. Just following up with this continued trade war between the two countries, in which you're seeing mass effects in this local environment, even California, both in the rice and nut business. India put on a 100% nut tariff. You're seeing 25% additional tariffs in rice. You're seeing Turkey's got a tariff. So there's just a lot of problems in this. You have high supplies within these government lines that make trade difficult. Of course, there's a lot of creative traders in the world, and for those creative traders, this probably is an opportunity in translating and working around these rules. But definitely, it's destabilizing the price for sure. And so, what else do I have to add to that? Just some more small points. VRAC is coming in the market. There is some hopes for the August 16th tender for Asia. Prices will obviously be much cheaper, but they have been buying South American, Uruguayan rice, and there's just a concern that that's going to happen again, even with much lower prices coming out of Asia. Outside of that, of course, the Philippines has been very interesting. They have now agreed to MAV-related Phase 1 imports, and they've also extended the delivery period to 15th of September. And there is a talk of NFA getting another 500,000 tons. This tariffication question is definitely adding to, is the Philippines going to open up? And if it opens up, what happens when the growers who are smaller, but there's many of them in the voting community, then are very upset that their profits go down significantly. So like all of this global stuff, there is this fight between the consumer and the grower and the trader, all of us in between as we transport this and the politics of what occurs in these countries. So again, it's a very complicated situation, but definitely we're going to watch Philippines very close. Outside of that, and again, obviously there's much more detail in the Rice Trader. I can only briefly, in these 5 minutes, just kind of give you some of the highlights. of the general thoughts of the trade and the direction. But there is special sections again on India this week. Every month we go through each of the majors. We kind of rotate weeks, and this is India's very focused time where we look at the Indian trade and the Indian developments and the crop. And so definitely look at the Indian section for a much longer and more data-filled section. And for those of you in the glutinous market, we like to every quarter do specials on the glutinous market, japonica, the parboiled, and et cetera markets. And this week is the glutinous rice trade. And so those in that market is a very interesting and dynamic market. What we are seeing from the specialties, as these price declines, people will move more over to the specialties overall. And by moving more over to the specialties, you're gonna probably decrease the premium. You're definitely seeing it in fragrant rice and basmati, where the larger supplies in those specialties are going to just push the premium down significantly. And I would take a special moment to talk about the japonica market. I'm very negative in the japonica market. This very similar to what we're seeing in these other specialties, but even more so. People have not realized what's gone on in Vietnam, and that this 1.1 million tons of exportable quantity is just going to massively affect the market. But it's also the same time you're seeing China be very aggressive in exporting their short, medium grain rice, and it's hitting key markets like Puerto Rico and like Turkey and other locations. Add that into a very good Australian crop, second good crop in a row. Add it on to the California crop. Although the smoke outside has been very interesting and may hit yields a little bit, the crop is very large, over 500,000 acres, and it's planted on a lot of rice ground that was kept out last year. So it's going to be a big crop. And then of course you have a very big crop in the south as well. Talking over 300,000 acres, which means 22 to 24 million hundredweights is the number many people are throwing around for the southern medium grain. So there's just going to be a lot of medium grain and japonica rice globally. Probably the only negative is a little bit of dryness in Australia to watch, but key is Egypt. There's a lot of talk of Egypt importing rice, but again, it's probably going to be indica rice like they have in the past, and it's going to be cheap, very likely. But the U.S. players are very excited about this, thinking that they're going to get the 500,000 tons of this Egyptian business. It could happen, but it doesn't meet with history, them being largely indica eaters, and all this other medium grain that's going to come in cheaper. So I just find it as an overall negative. I guess just in summary, the Rice Trader is always here to help. We're always looking for questions. If you have specific things we can review. I always look for interesting ideas from our customers, and I think that's a good review of the August 6th Rice Trader. It's always a pleasure to see you and talk to you, my friends, and I look forward to seeing you next week.